just like a friend. I tried to warn.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora and from me. Well, I have some rather interesting and colourful and important subjects to discuss today. Thank you for all your questions addressing what are really some pretty relevant and where the monarchy and the future of the monarchy is concerned, and Prince George's future is concerned, extremely important. So without further ado, I will plunge right in. It's going to be a melee of subjects, thank God. So we will have, hopefully, a bit of something for everyone. Starting with, I need to thank everybody for your wonderful, wonderful birthday greetings. I also need to thank those who sent flowers anonymously, including this beautiful arrangement. And day after tomorrow, I will have another arrangement. Tomorrow I won't have one of the arrangements because I have a house full of guests and I am going to be scattering the flowers throughout the castle, partly for the benefit of my guests. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is so kind of all of you who sent both flowers and birthday greetings. Sorry. Now, Di Marshalek says, Lady C, please comment on the Princess of Wales's attendance at the Halton Hall Music Festival without Prince William, in the presence of Rose Hanbury and her Marquis husband, in the light of all the Sussex Squad's stories about how much she hates her and why she's right to hate her. I'm addressing this as a public duty. I really hate to see when nasty people create mischief and fabricate scenarios and have false rumors circulating. I also hate people who are disloyal, nasty, inappropriate, and not only can't keep their mouths shut when they ought to, but open them up when they ought not to, and take out their needle and thread and embroider in the most fantastical fashion. There is absolutely no excuse for the rumours that have circulated, except that they have been a perfect foil for, well, of course, William and Catherine aren't gonna be a very good king and queen. Well, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. And, oh, Lacey baby, please, please, another nice, give that lollipop a lick. Please, please, please. I just get so thrilled. And, oh, can we have some of that hard-on cream that you know that I love so much? Are at it in the most disgraceful and disgusting and disloyal fashion. Well, if ever anything could have put paid to those rumours, it is the fact that Catherine showed up at the music festival on her own with Rose and David Chumley as her hosts, and she was happily mixing with everybody. And also, It's not the first time she's been in their presence recently. Nor is it the first time that they have fulfilled official duties when he was Lord Great Chamberlain and since he has been made a Lord in Waiting. So, is that enough? Actions speak louder than words, and there can be no hatred between people who have had and continue to have a very civilized, traditional friendship. Both the Cholmondeleys and the Waleses are firmly, solidly, and irrevocably married. They both have wonderful marriages in a traditional structure with all the traditional virtues. I wish we could say the same for Mr. DeMille. I'm ready for my close-up. Oh, God. These stress patches, you know. And it's really difficult living with somebody who has mental problems. I ought to know. Not only do I live with H, but I look in the mirror every day. And I've got to live with me as well. I hope that answers the question. And you know, the longer this goes on, is the more discredited the Sussexes and their squad are. Rightly called the SS. Susie Ann says, "Hi, Lady C and fellow followers." Hello, Susie S. Susie Ann, sorry. Sorry. Oh. My best friend when I was growing up was Susie Surridge. So that's how I get the Susie S. Sorry. Hi, Lady C and fellow followers. I need to express my fear that the Harkles are again planning something diabolical to coincide with William's trip to New York for an Earthshot event. When William and Kate were in Boston for the Earthshot Prize, the Harkles managed to manufacture a situation with Lady Susan Hussey that was designed to embarrass the royal family and overshadow the Wales tour in the US. I'm just afraid that the Harkles have another plot waiting in the wings to embarrass William once again. Well, Susie Ann, you can depend on it. They've got some trick up their sleeve. Whether it's going to be that effective is something else again. Because it's not every day that Gozy Filani, otherwise known as Marlene Headley, drops into anybody's lap with all those bangaram, as the Jamaicans would say. Oh, and while we're at it, as Harry and Meghan would say, windmills at dawn, dusk, and every other time. But yes, I am sure they will come up with something. I don't think it's necessarily going to be that effective. And hopefully, the palace will have learned from that event to be slightly more measured before they leap. Because even though they were justifiably quick off the mark, some of that language could have been cleaned up to everybody's benefit. So let's leave that where it belongs, in the past, and wait for what is going to be dished up to us in the future, because you can depend on it. It's gonna be some tasty morsel, but it might just be so distraught. Gordon, please give me a house for 40 million. I've got a Taliban targeting me on my back because of that lunatic I'm married to. I'm pregnant again. I mean, H looked at me and I got pregnant. And I don't want the baby. But I'm going to be stuck with the baby and I'm going to have to give back the prize that we accepted for limiting our family to 2. Oh, Meg, you don't need to do that. Not a chance. No, no, no. Why would you need to do something like that? We don't need to give back prizes. We didn't give back Kerry Kennedy the prize for fighting institutional racism in my family. We don't need to give back anything. But I don't want your baby. Don't worry, Meg. You're not gonna have it. I can bank on it. You're going to have a miscarriage. Or some other variation on the theme of fantasy. Let's wait and see. And it really is a sad day when people can and ought to make jokes about what in other circumstances would actually be poignant losses. But the beautiful thing about humour is pain gets converted into pleasure with humour. And when the Harrys and Meghans of this world dish up such golden opportunities, one would have to be extraordinarily humorless to not take advantage of the opportunity. Rita Farrell says, I have been watching Suits and have noticed that the Rachel Zane was obviously passing for Caucasian. Her makeup was very white and there was no bronze used. Rita Farrell, you're absolutely right. I looked at Suits. In those days, I spent an awful lot of time in France, in the middle of the country, doing absolutely nothing, surrounded by dogs, cats, and sheep on the domain, which I never saw, and people who could not speak English, and rarely their conversation was limited to the sheep and the cows, and I'd much rather read a book. And when I got tired of reading, I would look at television. Or then I'd have to go 45 minutes to see a friend, or which I would do occasionally. But those were my television days. And yeah, I saw Suits. And you could have bowled me over with a feather when, I think his name is Wendell Corey, the black actor, pitched up as Meghan's father, Rachel Zane's father. I thought, I was taken aback, and I'm Jamaican. I know my people of colour. And it had not occurred to me until then that Meghan was supposedly a woman of colour. I suppose with hindsight you could have thought, yeah, maybe, but you didn't think so, because the characterization, the everything was absolutely white. So you're absolutely right. This is something that more and more people will notice as more and more people look at Suits, because Ari Emanuel, I am told by my contacts in Hollywood, has been working those phones and favours on behalf of Meghan and Harry, but mostly Meghan, with and in conjunction with Netflix, to boost Meghan and possibly Harry as well, so that they will turn around the toxicity that is present at the moment, and that Netflix's investment in Harry and Meghan will begin to bear fruit. They don't really care whether it's negative or positive. They only care that, well, let me put it another way. All dollar bills are green, and it doesn't matter whether they come from bloody sources or honourable sources, as long as they come. In the last few days, there has been a big push by Netflix and Ari Emanuel to jump over the hurdle of Harry and Meghan's unpopularity. And one thing piggybacking on the back of the other. So the Invictus games are being pushed for all Netflix is worth as something worth seeing, and you know, maybe they will be very poignant. I mean, there is no doubt that the injured soldiers have been very brave and that they deserve our respect. So Harry's reputation is going to be piggybacking on their lost limbs as well. Then Meghan's suits is piggybacking on the back of all of that. One advertisement leads into another. There's nothing even subtle about it. It's a very cack-handed and couldn't be more obvious. Well, I am told they have high hopes for turning the losers around and making them into winners, reputationally. And even if they can't do that, as long as they all make money, ultimately none of them cares, and that includes Harry and Meghan. Can you imagine the depths to which he has fallen? Also, if they can't turn it around, they've done their best, they failed. Adios, baby. Goodbye and good riddance to that jerk of a prince and his frowsy wife will be their attitude, I am assured. So, Queen of the Night says, Lady C, you appeared in Celebs on the Farm with Cheryl Hole. I certainly did. There's been a real hoo-ha about her appearance on MasterChef. The BBC has been criticised by the Mail and Telegraph for including her on the show, especially now it's emerged she once used the term TERF. I'd love your contribution on this subject. Delighted. I have to tell you, I liked Cheryl. I thought she was a great gal, in quotes, when she was all togged up as Cheryl. And when she was Luke, I think his name is Luke Underwood Bleach. Still a great name, isn't it? I mean, you couldn't make that one up either. Except, of course, he's made up Cheryl Hole. He would be referred to as him when he was out of drag and her when he was in drag. And he is a really nice guy. And I have to tell you, I am slightly discomfited about the hoo-ha that has been created in all of this. Because, you know, one of the other competitors is Samantha Fox. who was a page 3 girl. Cheryl on MasterChef is not doing her act, which incidentally I've never seen. But it's most likely raunchy. So what if it's raunchy? That's what people go to see. They go to drag acts to see raunch. And they can be very funny. They can be great fun. In fact, I went earlier this year. Was it earlier this year or was it last year? May have been last year. Must have been last year. Yes, last year. I went to the Ladyboys of Bangkok with a priest and with somebody who works in a church. And we all thought it was funny. It is meant to be funny. It is meant to be naughty. Evidently, Cheryl used the word turf once to describe people who were evidently criticising her, which she thought was unfair. Are we going to prevent somebody from earning a living because they once used a term that we find objectionable? I'm sorry. I mean, what degree of intolerance are these critics coming up with? I mean, I'm perfectly happy to lambast the BBC when it's done something untoward, but when it's done nothing untoward, because Cheryl's act is not a part of MasterChef, I'm sure. Incidentally, I've never seen MasterChef. I don't have the time to look at things like that. So, but, you know, so she used the word turf once. Does that mean she should never work? I mean, give me a break. And then you have somebody called Lucy Marsh, who has researched drag queens for the Family Education Trust sake. It is completely inappropriate because MasterChef is a family show and drag is not family friendly in any circumstances. It's highly sexualized, adult only entertainment. Well, I beg to differ. I'm sorry. I certainly would object to drag acts which are raunchy being displayed in front of children before the watershed hour. That, I think, would be inappropriate. But drag is not illegal in our society. Of that flawed thinking, Lucy Marsh is rarely saying that since drag is not illegal, drag is not, being a drag queen is not any longer regarded as anything immoral either. So off that premise, is she suggesting that gays shouldn't have an audience either? Because she's coming pretty close to that. As for Brendan Clark-Smith, who is a Tory MP, clearly I disagree with the use of the term turf, as he ought to. But that's fine. She used it once. Everybody uses something once that they shouldn't. Give me a break. I'm pretty damn sure he has. Cheryl Hole should take note of the fact that their critics are not wishing to completely cancel them, like many of those who subscribe to gender ideology do, of those with gender-critical views. Tolerance and diversity must apply to all lawful viewpoints. And I couldn't agree with Brendan Clark-Smith more. That means Cheryl Hole has an absolute right to be on MasterChef, as long as she is conducting herself properly. And I have to tell you, I thought she was really a lovely person. And I think I'm a pretty good judge of character. And so Cheryl wades in to all of this controversy. And she pointed out on the BBC that the recent homophobic double stabbing in Clapham, South London, was a reason, quote unquote, to have our voices and stories heard and show we're nothing to be feared. I agree with that. There's nothing fearsome about Cheryl or some of the other drag queens that I have seen, including at parties with royalty. When the king was Prince of Wales, he had a drag act as entertainment for one of his parties. Everybody loved it. I had the same drag act as entertainment at the Maypole Ball in 1991. Sorry, not all drag is unsavory. Some of it is good, clean entertainment. And I think, as I will close with what Cheryl said, we're just individuals wanting to live our lives and doing no harm and causing no grievances to anybody. So I don't understand why people take such an issue to us as a community. I certainly understand the objection that people have to raunchy drag with very graphic overtones performed in front of children. But otherwise, no. There is a fine ancient tradition of kabuki in Japan, which is effectively cleaned up drag. And we in the West have our version of it as well. And I have never seen Cheryl Hole conduct herself in any way except exemplarily, whether she was performing as Cheryl or as Luke. And I think on that note, we can safely go to what Susan M.J. says. I believe it was Meghan's idea to hide the children the way they have been hidden, thinking it would raise curiosity and she'd be able to make more money from pictures. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. That's my information. Harry was not, in the early days, averse to any of the presentations of the children in the perfectly normal royal way, where the children would be occasionally seen, and the way the Wales children are being seen. And may I point out, in Britain, there is a code of conduct in which the press are obliged to leave the children alone, except on carefully scripted and agreed occasions. This is really important. So Harry and Meghan saying that they are worried, or Meghan having made the point, that they were worried that their children would be sacrificial lambs to the press, was utter rubbish, a total invention, along with many of her other inventions. But then, you know, Meghan has a very overactive imagination. I feel a head cold coming on. I wonder why. Mickey, honey, please, go get me some Coke. Please, Mickey, I need something to drink, some Diet Coke. To resume the question, She now realizes by hiding them so much, the public isn't really that interested anymore, as we're not really invested in them. Not the way we would have been as we are with the children of Princess Catherine and Prince William. Now she's panicking. She wants to put them out there before it gets too late to merge them. Harry knows what she's up to. He'd have to be totally stupid if he didn't. Well, he's stupid, but hopefully he's not that stupid. You have actually touched upon something I have previously said. I have previously made the point on this show that Meghan was making a huge mistake, because unless you know people, you have no interest in them. Meghan thought that by the mystery children, everybody's going to want to pay $1 million for their first photographs, and no one did. What am I going to do? My $1 million plan backfired. You can't have affection unless you know, whether actually or theoretically, people. I mean, when Diana died, there was a massive outpouring of grief, in part because people thought they knew her. She had been an everyday part of their lives for 16 years, and she had put herself out there in a very sympathy-arousing way, and she got a lot of sympathy and affection, especially when she died, and, you know, any of the hiccups from before were just smoothed over. People wouldn't have felt like that had they not felt that they knew her. I've made this point before. And Meghan has made a huge mistake in miscalculating yet again. I mean, the woman is so calculating, but she constantly miscalculates. And you sort of think, ye gods, can't you just grow a brain and at least get some discernment factored into your thinking? We know and like the Wales children because we know and like them. They're endearing little naughtinesses, which all children, if they're normal, are subject to. Help to make us like them even more. That's why we liked Harry so much, because he was naughty, he was not playing to the script, he was off-piste, so to speak. Well, let us see. I want to introduce my latest range, Prince Archie t-shirts. $999 originally, reduced to $99.99 for all of you who would like to buy a Prince Archie t-shirt. And what about Lilibet? Hair dye for babies. Hair dye for the young. Guaranteed to not scald the scalp. Why don't you start with the redhead look? Princess Lilibet hair color for kids. Reduced from $18.99 to $17.96. Rush out and buy your bargains. There's only a limited supply. Let's see what happens, because if what is being said is true and Harry doesn't want those children trotted out at all, he could well be wise to Megsie baby's tricks. Damn Megsie baby and her tricks. I'm just so clever, no one can see through me, even though I'm as transparent as glass. And you know, I'm the Empress with new clothes. And don't you dare say that you can see straight through them and that my body's lacking. I've got a perfect body. Perfect. Everything about me is perfect. Jackie says, is it true if Prince Charles and Prince William pass before Prince George turns 18, will Harry serve as regent until George is old enough to take the throne? Apparently, according to the Regency Act, this is the case. Thank you. This is not the case, actually. But several people are concerned about it, and I am going to address it. Under the Regency Acts of 1937 and amended in 1953, Harry will not, as things stand, qualify as regent. And I'm going to read out the relevant sections from the 1937 Regency Act. Point 3, the regent, Point 1. If a regency becomes necessary under this act, the regent shall be that person who, excluding any persons disqualified under this section, is next in the line of succession to the crown. 2. A person shall be disqualified from becoming or being regent if he is not a British subject of full age and domiciled in some part of the United Kingdom, or is a person who would, under Section 2 of the Act of Settlement, be incapable of inheriting, possessing, and enjoying the crown. And Section 3 of the Act of Settlement shall apply in the case of a regent as it applies in the case of a sovereign. What that means in plain language is, if William should die while he is king and George is underage. Oh, actually, before I even do that, let me read out Section 5 and just cover it all in one. Guardianship, etc. of the sovereign during regency. During a regency, unless Parliament otherwise determines, and notice, Parliament can determine. 1. If the sovereign is under the age of 18 years and unmarried, his mother, if she is living, shall have the guardianship of his person. Now, what all of this means is, if you take it in conjunction with the Regency Act as it was amended in 1953, to include the Duke of Edinburgh as possessing the right to be regent, Catherine, who would be the Queen, would be the natural choice to be regent. I'm trying to particularize this so there's no misunderstanding. Putting that aside, under the Regency Act of 1937, which has not been repealed, by the way, it was simply amended to allow Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, to become a Councillor of State, which she was not previously permitted to be, and for Prince Philip to qualify as the regent for Prince Charles in the event of the Queen Elizabeth II's death. So Catherine is the one who qualifies and is first choice for regent under the 1953 Act. Under the 1937 Act, before the spouse of the monarch was put in as the obvious choice as regent, the next in line of succession to the throne would have been regent, except he has to be living heir. He has to be accessible. Harry does not live here. Harry would not be accessible. There are also other reasons why Harry would not be desirable. And don't for a second think that Parliament wouldn't move quicker than grease lightning to disqualify him as regent, because they would. Every Conservative in this country would immediately demand that Harry cease being regent because he has made his political prejudices rather too well known. That's one point. His drug taking would render him unfit to be regent. That's number two. Number three, it would then go, if Catherine were not qualified, which she would be patently qualified to be regent, it would then go to the next in line of succession, who was a major. That would be the Duke of York if he were alive, which he might well not be, or he might disqualify himself, or he might be disqualified for whatever reasons, and that would then bring it down to Princess Beatrice. And I don't think anybody would have a particular objection to her, not that I suspect that many people would be enamored of the choice. But none of this is likely to happen, and if it were to happen, it would be Queen Catherine who would be the regent. So rest assured, the idea of Doria, let's chill and have a spliff. Can you imagine Buckingham Palace with the regent? Chill, man, chill. Well, you know, son-in-law, it's all about racism. I mean, the reason why they want you to open Parliament on behalf of the king is that they're racist, and they don't understand that you're not a fixture and you're not something to be dished up the way they wanted my grandchildren to be dished up for the benefit of the monarchy. You're the regent. I mean, you shouldn't have to disturb yourself. And I mean, Why should you waste your time putting on gowns and going to Parliament when we can get stoned? Isn't life wonderful? Talk about Archie Bunker comes to town. Mary Wilson says, happy birthday, Lady C. Do you think the king should abdicate? He should be able to enjoy his life. In my opinion, William and Catherine would be a better king and queen. They are young and strong. The king should do what the nation wants. Mary Wilson, I'm afraid. This is not a television show. This is real life that we're speaking about. You know, the monarchy is not an elective. King Charles is a rightful king of this country. He has prepared for over 50 years to be king of this country. He is doing a pretty good job, and why should he abdicate? Also, once you're crowned, you're not supposed to abdicate. So I don't think there's much chance of that. There might be a regency should he become incapacitated, in much the same way that there would have been a regency had Queen Elizabeth II become irretrievably incapable of executing her duties. And in fact, for the last 2 or 3 years of her reign, there was a sort of soft regency, as I kept on pointing out, without there actually being a regency. So no, I think you also assume that the nation wants William to be king. Some people do, but I'm afraid there's an awful lot more support for King Charles III, who people can see is a good and earnest man trying to do a good and proper job. I don't think there's quite as much will, except in certain elements of the fashionable press, for William becoming king and Charles abdicating. With due respect, we're not Belgium and we're not the Netherlands. Our monarchs are monarchs for life, unless they escape before their coronation. I hope that answers the question. And as you can see very clearly, I have my sympathies and I don't conceal where they lie. J. White Oak says, Lady C, I always switch off the very moment you start slagging Diana, and I rarely watch your channel for that reason. I never heard another word after you mentioned her name in a negative manner. I don't care how well you knew her. In fact, I wouldn't care if every bad word you have to say about her is even true. It was her business. She has been dead for 25 years. Let her rest in peace, for heaven's sake. I know you've heard of never speaking ill of the dead. It's such bad form on your part. 2 exclamation marks. Then she wishes me a happy birthday, or he wishes me a happy 74th birthday. J. White Oak. My dear. Other people in rather less acerbic ways have made similar points. So I'm going to address it using your comment. You are absolutely entitled to switch off the moment you don't like something. I would be the last person to discourage you from exercising your freedom of choice. You don't want to hear it? Don't. That's a very constructive way to behave. You don't care whether what I'm saying is true or not? Fine. You don't have to care. You don't want to hear the truth? don't listen to it. You've made your choice. I respect that. However, when you say, I know you've heard of never speaking ill of the dead, it's such bad form on your part. My dear, thanks for the scolding, but if you don't mind awfully, I will decline to accept it for the following reasons. Number one, nobody criticised Hugh Trevor Roper when he wrote The Last Days of Hitler. Let me make that point. Number two, I'm not likening Diana to Hitler in terms of bad deeds, but I am certainly likening Diana to Hitler in terms of both of them being historical figures of some controversy. One, appalling behaviour, which was ghastly and awful, and I say this as the granddaughter of a Jewess who would never have even been born had Hitler prevailed, so I am cutting Hitler no slack. On the other hand, I do make the point that Diana did a tremendous amount of damage to the monarchy, and the damage persists to this day, as one can see from the evidence of Harry's upbringing and behaviour. Diana was a historical figure. Her actions have affected the lives of people and continue to affect the lives of people. Anybody who is interested in history and or the truth wants to get to it, both the good and the bad. You don't want me to get to the truth? Switch off. Don't let me disturb you. But don't for a second think I'm going down that rabbit hole of self-delusion where I would avoid addressing serious historical issues because you regard it as bad form on my part to speak the truth about the actions and the consequences of the actions and the impact those consequences have upon our lives to this very day, because you don't want me speaking the truth? Sorry, it is my duty as a historian to speak the truth as I find it. Who likes it, likes it. Who doesn't, doesn't. I respect your right to switch off. You don't respect my right to speak the truth? Don't. But I'm not going to stop to humour you or anybody else. And for what it's worth, I don't need any lectures from you or anybody else on what is poor form. I don't recall that you wrote J. Whiteoak's Guide to Being a Modern Lady or got any praise for it. I did. I wrote Lady Colin Campbell's Guide to Being a Modern Lady. And I make no apologies for speaking the truth when it is appropriate. I hope I make myself very clear on this subject. I know that there are many Diana fans. Fine, be a Diana fan. I mean, I happen to have been a Diana fan when she deserved me to be a Diana fan. When she didn't, I wasn't. And nobody will browbeat, blackmail, or abuse me into submission where I would decline to speak the truth because I was worried about their opinion. I don't give a damn about their opinion if it does not accord with what I regard as my responsibility to the truth, to justice, to ethics, and to fact. And may I end by pointing out, if I hadn't written Diana in private, Diana would have had a clear run to destroy the Prince of Wales's life. Is that what you think should have happened? A man who did not deserve to have his life destroyed. Destroyed? Thanks, but no thanks. And hopefully I won't have to address this issue ever again. So on that note, I would say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest, if not enjoyment, to you. Please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what to address. And I will end by saying I've never entered a popularity contest and I don't propose to start at 74. Who likes what I have to say, likes it. Who doesn't have to like it. Don't have to like me either. Or you can like me and not like what I have to say. But I'm not going to be browbeaten or blackmailed into submitting to a fantasy that never existed. And I'm not in the business of perpetuating people's fantasies. If they want to perpetuate their own, that's up to them. I have no argument with people implementing their rights of choice. I respect them, and I respect your right to do everything. Switch me off, shut me down, whatever. Except I don't think it's poor form on my part to be an accurate historian. I think it's my duty. And on that note, I'll say thanks for listening. Godspeed. And if you have enjoyed this, or at least found it interesting, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care.